Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we have the new ProAcryl one-step paints from Monument Hobbies on the channel to review. I'll be honest, I've filmed this a few times already. The more I use the paints, the more the opinion changes, and that's why I've recorded this about 3 times at this point. I also want to make a note, these paints were not sent to me for free. So even though I have begged repeatedly to get paints for free from Monument Hobbies because I love their paints and use their ProAcryl line pretty exclusively, they said no.
Thousands of tears later.
These were purchased with my own money, and this way you can see if they're worth it for you with no bias, no influence at all from Monument Hobbies, because these were not sent to me and this is not a sponsored video. These were announced about a few weeks ago, I believe on May 18th, so about a week ago. And I immediately wanted to know if these were just another contrast paint like you'd expect from any other brand really, or if they were truly different from what we have on the market already. If you've used contrast paints before, then you kind of know what I was already expecting. Same thing we got with the contrast paints from Citadel, and same thing we got with the contrast paints from Vallejo with the Express line, and same thing we got with the Army Painter Speed Paints, well, at least version 2, which was better, much better than version 1. And what I mean by that is it's a fairly transparent paint with a high flow. It's very thin, pulls in the recesses. I traditionally only use them in high detail areas. So for example, dragon scales, chainmail, fur, hair, grass, and I typically don't attempt to paint flat areas too often with them. So when I first picked up the one-step paints, I expected that same exact behavior. But these are very different. They're much more opaque. They have much less flow than traditional contrast paints. So what does that mean for flat areas? Well, they don't run away from flat areas as easily, and they don't pull up into splotchy messes either on a flat area. It's a very different approach to getting that base coat and the shadows down at the same time, because that flat area now isn't just causing this coffee staining that I was concerned with. I printed a few of these contrast swatch rings on my Bamboo Lab P2S printer, and I'm painting them up with the one-step paints. And this will hopefully showcase how they behave over a quick zenithal undercoat and how they behave over somewhat flat areas. Obviously through the internet, through YouTube, I don't know how this is going to come through as far as the colors necessarily. I expect them to be pretty true to what I'm seeing here. With that said, I am extremely impressed with the lighter colors on this set. The yellow especially I want to kind of touch on because it's unique. The way it comes across on the piece is actually much better than any of the contrast paints I've used in the past. We're going to look at a side-by-side between 2 different printed pieces, and we're going to compare a traditional contrast paint like a Vallejo Express to the warm yellow from ProAcryl One Step. And yellow, like I said, as you know, is a paint that is traditionally, or a color, a tone that's traditionally a little bit tricky to work with, especially with contrast paints. They tend to coffee stain pretty easily, and they tend to not color very well. This is gonna maybe surprise you when you see these images side by side. So I took the models and primed them with your standard 1 coat of zenithal highlighting over the top from a rattle can. Nothing fancy, to be honest. And then I applied a single coat of each of these paints. So the Vallejo Express and the ProAcryl One Step Warm Yellow. I tried to match the colors as best I could, so I picked a color from the Vallejo Express line that seemed to be fairly close to the yellow I'm seeing here. But there's going to be a slight deviation. It's not the perfect yellow, it's not identical, but should be close enough to give you an idea of how yellows are behaving on both these lines and the differences between them. So starting with the more traditional standard contrast paint, right? You can see that behavior in the Vallejo Express line. Note how thin it is, note how it runs down into the crevices, what you'd expect from any contrast paint, right? It's also very translucent. Again, a lot of that undercoating and zenithal is punching right through. Now, that said, it also has fairly significant amount of coffee staining and tide staining, especially in the flat areas. Now let's look at the one-step paints. I don't know if it's the higher pigment density, I don't know if it's the medium, but it's creating a higher opacity. It's also a reduced flow. It's much more predictable. It's ending up where you'd expect. And this is not necessarily about being better or worse. They have pros and cons, right? But you're not fighting the paint to get an even look on your model. even on the flat areas. And that is something that is very unique to this paint line. Now, one thing to notice is that the zenithal, the undercoat, is not really shining through as much. we kind of expected that, right? The opacity is higher. So the subtle tonality difference isn't showing up as much, except for the deepest blacks and the starkest whites. So if you love doing a zenithal highlight with heavy undercoating, these are still going to show that through. I mean, that's not going to be something that these can't handle. But you may need to adjust your workflow slightly to compensate. If you really want the zenithal to show, you may need to adjust just how strong your undercoat is. You have to have a undercoat or a zenithal that's really sharp. So your brights need to be extra bright, extremely bright, and your shadows need to be very deep. And this way, the tonality is going to show through a little bit better through this more opaque type paint. I want to take this one step further and pull up a famous contrast paint, Skeleton Horde from Citadel Paints. Coffee staining is pretty significant with this paint. So I was curious to see just how it would compare, how splotchy it would get, how it would look. And I'm going to paint them here on these 3D printed models, and through the magic of editing, we're going to speed through this and let it dry pretty quickly. Now it's definitely showing the zenithal a lot better than the one-step paints that we had before, but the pigments do pool in areas where it doesn't look that great. Now taking one of the current ProAcryl line paints that are not one-step, we're going to go ahead and mix it with the special medium to create our own one-step paint. And we're going to try to match the Skeleton Horde as best we can. Skeleton Horde is like a sepia type tone, and I don't feel like any of the paints that ProAcryl has currently really matches the tone well. So we're going to try to get as close as we can. We're going to take a drop or so of bone, we're going to take a drop of dark brown or dark umber, and we're going to mix that in a 2:1 ratio. This should give us a similar consistency to the already released pre-mixed 12 one-step paints. Even with just this one attempt, you can tell the differences here are significant compared to the contrast paints that we are used to. Again, neither a good or bad thing. I don't want anyone to see this and say, oh, I'm saying one-step paints are better than the contrast paints we've used before. They're not better, they're different. So what's the verdict here? They're probably worth picking up for anyone that wants the speed of a contrast paint, a quick application that gives you some tonality from shadows to highlights, but they want the controlled precision of a base coat to some extent. Less transparency, better coverage. Now, if you already have contrast paints and you are content with their usage and their pros and cons, then honestly, this line may not be for you. That's fine. For me, I am kind of excited about them. I feel like there are a lot of use cases where I'm going to enjoy mixing with these paints and converting my current ProAcryl line into this one-step tile paint. It's going to be fun. So I'm excited for them. I think the fact that they cover so well means I can use them in more versatile ways. So let me know in the comments. Are you going to try these out? Are you sticking with your current system? Do you feel like they were an improvement to what contrast paints already were? Or is this honestly not what you had in mind? Anyways, drop a comment below, please. Drop a like and a subscribe as well. They really help the channel out. And as always, keep on watching, keep on printing, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care.